Welcome back to Morning Express. Time now for the way it is as we discuss week 2 of the mass voters registration exercise, as well as the politics that is involved in this process. With us in studio, lawyers Ambrose Wedder, as well as High Court Advocate William Okech. Many thanks for joining us in studio, gentlemen. Now, Wedder, let's begin with you. It is week 2 of the mass voters registration exercise. About is it 6 million targeted voters by the IEBC?
Yes.
But as it is, we've seen a lot of voter apathy and a lot of political leaders now moving to the ground and to the strongholds to ensure that voters register as is. But how would you explain this voters apathy phenomena that is currently being witnessed?
I really don't know where you people are seeing this voter apathy. Where is it? You must appreciate that quite a number of people have the votes. We had taken it years. It is mainly the new people and those who have not had IDs.
Right.
And you can see that for the first time in the history of this country, the leaders themselves have come out to rake out people to come and pick the votes. And it seems to be working very well. You've seen the president in his region, in areas or in his strongholds, and he's going around. You have seen Raila Odinga. You have seen everybody is out to ensure that people take a vote. So where this apathy you people are talking about, it is day one. And day one, you don't expect Kenyans to line up and go at night.
Right.
We still have 30 days.
The last minute rush.
Yes, and I think it is going on very well. The way it is being done, I find it very good, very interesting, and we keep on urging those who do not have to go out and take. And I saw the president tackling where the problem is. The problem is we have many uncollected IDs.
Right.
And some people just don't care. So that is why he's saying, look for people to take these IDs to these people. And if that happens, and then he also said, let those who do not have IDs be given IDs within 3-4 days. You apply today, it is done, and it is given. When I was young, young in secondary school, when President Moi first introduced IDs, I remember people would go to line up for those IDs. The chief, the sub-chief, the DO, and the machines would be there. You finish up, and you are given the ID. And there's nothing different from the ID and the voter's card, which you are also given the same day. So the president is right that you can get your ID in 3 days. Those who do not have, and the registration officials make sure that people have the IDs, they take their quotas, and then they get ready to vote. This talk of this apathy, I think we have just fallen in love with the word apathy, and we want to see it's nowhere.
All right. And
I can't go because me, I have. I know my brother here has. So when you see it doesn't go, you don't say, now there are very few people.
Right.
And they will go.
And William, I don't know if you agree with Wedder, because there's been a lot of talk in the media of voter apathy because of corruption, voter apathy among the youth that are yet to register as voters. But do you agree that, this voter apathy is just something the media is waking up? It's not actually there?
Well, I can talk of apathy in 2 different scenarios. There could not be apathy in terms of registration, as Wedder says. Kenyans, by our very nature, we are last-minute people. We love rushing towards the very last minute. Because where I work, I happen to neighbor county commissioner's office, where there's an Huduma center and issuance of IDs. And trust me, each and every morning I've gone there since this exercise was launched. There is a good number of people lining up to get those IDs.
Right.
And also to also transfer their registration particulars. But on the contrary, there could be apathy with those who are intending to vote this year. And even I myself, particularly, I've had to talk to some friends who are sharing and saying that they may not vote after all this year because of issues of corruption, because of their perceived fear of violence. Some are even planning to go out of the country. So there could be apathy based on some fears on the outcome of the elections, what will happen.
Right.
But in terms of registration, Kenyans are enthusiastic and they're registering in their numbers, and the numbers will pick up.
And Wedder, I'd like you to probably address that issue. Apathy in terms of a bit of fear in the upcoming elections. Just this week on Twitter, we had a lot of trending vibes in terms of the it looks like military equipment that's been brought into the country and the police vehicles. And so a lot of Kenyans were saying, what's being prepared for? Because we haven't been told what this equipment is for, and many of them are afraid because of that.
I think each time you hear such talks, ask yourself which side of the divider you talk. When you see like the court side of the country talking, you'd jump out of this country. You think there is election tomorrow and the people are running away. We'll run. When you see Jubilee side or the other side, you'd think there's everything wrong with the court side and there's no corruption and things are clear. So it depends with who are you listening to. And then people tend to please their friends so that they don't disclose the middle class. They don't want to disclose which side they support because they are not sure. They have their jobs, they have their work. So how do they hide? They hide by saying, you know me, I will not vote. The way things are going, I will not vote.
Which is what happened with Trump, I think.
It is 7 months to elections. And this country, wait on the 8th, early in the morning by 3. You will see those lines very long. So don't listen to Kenyans when they tell you, you know me, I don't know which side to vote. It is still 7 months, and then we keep on changing. I have been on this bench for very long. 1 week, government is at the top. We come here and my brother Omar is going under the table. Another week, government is so down. The opposition is so up that you say, if you call the election today, we are out. So 7 months. Now I think the government is still receiving a beating. But wait until the railway comes in. Then you will be like, this is the thing. So 7 months to say there will be voter apathies and people will run away. And we will not run away. The few who will run away will not even tell you. They are the ones who are pretending, I will be here to vote. And wait and see. Those who want to go out of the country, some of them don't even have passports. So there are few people who are peddling fears. What the president launched are the things that the police need.
Right.
Some are needed in volatile areas like West Pokot, like Samburu, like the cattle rustling has increased. You need those vehicles there. Now, the president did not come to say, now these ones are going to West Pokot. But for opposition, you say, oh, these ones are being prepared so that the president will rig, so that they use it against us. Yeah, that's the propaganda.
Right.
Some of those armored vehicles are meant for very volatile areas. And most Kenyans who are eating and swinging here in Nairobi, they do not know that in some parts of this country, even the military has to go there fully prepared. They are country in a country because of cattle rustling. There are people who are born and trained on the issue of cattle rustling, and they do it perfectly, and they're dangerous. So the military has to deal with it. The police has to deal with it in a special way. But strategy requires, when you bring in your artillery, you don't say, this one I'm taking to Kisumu, this one I'm taking to Bura, this one I'm taking... We even have the coast issues in the forest. All these have to be dealt with. So those who are spreading rumors and malicious falsehood, there will be violence. There will be no violence here in this country. Why am I saying so? Kenya is divided on the... Kenya is a capitalist society.
Right.
All our leaders, all of them, Honorable Raila Odinga, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, Johnson, Muthama, all of them are capitalists, owners of capital. And owners of capital do not want something that disrupts capital. They don't want anything that can destroy the capital. So they'll talk about violence, but when the real violence comes, they say, please stop. You get it?
But isn't this, were they still not capitalists during the 2007 and 2008 post-election violence?
The owners of capital did not fight. They did not even allow the violence to go near their capital. Violence was in the streets and in the slums. And when it was degenerating and hurting capital, you saw them. You saw Raila, you saw Kibaki. They sat together and said, my brother, this cake is big enough. We can eat it as the small man is struggling in Kibera. So the owners of capital will not fight. Just like Okech and myself here, we may be different. You may be CORD, I may be Jubilee. But when we talk about burning cars and houses, we will agree and say, let's just fight in the streets, but let's not burn houses. Because he'll burn mine and burn his. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
Once you realize that, whatever disagreement that we may have in this country, you will see Honorable Raila Odinga and Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta sitting down and taking tea and saying, Nehure, there's nothing to fight about, let the other guys fight. Because they are owners of capital. Even when I go in the village, when people talk about fire and burning things, I say, gentlemen.
Right.
Even if they are going to burn my opponents, I say, gentlemen. Because the moment you see his car burning, you remember your car. Okay? That's why you see mothers. Mothers, when you see even a thief being lynched, you will see mothers feeling very bad and they don't participate.
Right.
Not because they like the thief, but they think of also their children. They say, this can happen to my child.
Right.
So Kenya is going to remain stable. It's going to remain good. There are a few skirmishes there that accompany elections, just like they are there in America. Even in America, there are skirmishes.
Right.
So let us not fearmonger. Oh, there will be violence. There will be rigging. Rigging, if you give Raila a chance to rig, he will rig.
Right. And that's what I want to talk about next, William, before you give your take. Let's listen to the different political leaders across the political divide as they sensitize voters to go out and register.
Mimi nataka niwasihi waumini wote ambao wako hapa siku ya leo kwamba tafadhali tusaidie kuhakikisha kwamba watu wanaenda kwa kituo cha kujiandikisha, wajiandikishe wawe wapigaji kura.
Katika kaunti ya Uasin Gishu tuko na zaidi ya watu 200,000 wana vitambulisho ili hali hawana kadi ya kura. Na sisi kama wale tunawania viti, tumeona tutachukua hii kwa jukumu letu kuhamasisha wananchi ya kuwa wako na jukumu kama wananchi kufanya uamuzi. Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya Kenya? Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya county? Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya constituency? Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya ward kupitia kwa kura?
Nyinyi mchukue kura, siku ya kupiga, siku saa ya kuhesabu, saa ya kutangaza. Hayo yote tutaangalia. Nyinyi yenu ni kupiga na kukaa hapo kwa kituo. Lakini ikipiga kule juu, waachie sisi. Mara hii hatutakuja siku kusema imeibiwa.
Responsibility ya mwananchi ni kuhakikisha kwamba unachukua kura, unapiga kura hiyo kwa serikali ambayo iko na mipango ambayo inaweza kubadilisha maisha yako na kubadilisha nchi yako. Hii ni wakati wa kipekee. This is a special moment for every Kenyan.
Naomba na tuwasema vijana wa Kenya wapatiwe vitambulisho, kwa sababu vitambulisho baadaye mtu achukue kura. Vijana ndio wengi, na mkiwa wengi na hamna kura hamwezi kujisaidia, na njia ya kujisaidia ni ya kuchagua yule kiongozi ambaye atawasaidia.
Leaders from across the political divide urging Kenyans to go out and register as voters. And that is a conversation we're having in studio this morning. My panelists, lawyers Ambrose Weda, William Okech, and the governance expert Javas Bigambo now joins us. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Javas. Now, before we listened to that, William, you're just about to speak. You know, Weda says there will be no violence. There's no voters' apathy, even, you know, with the fear to violence. But let's talk about the rigging aspect of it. And you know, there's a lot of pressure now on the new IEBC team led by Wafula Chebukati in terms of auditing the voter register. And we've seen Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, also Raila Odinga, come out and say that the IDs were used in cases of double registration. And now they want the voter register audited because they say there's about 1.5 million dead people in the voters register.
Quite right. I think the surest way to give confidence to citizens that there's going to be clean, credible elections is to have a voters register which has no issues. And true issues have come up where there's double registration, shared ID numbers. And as I said, for any ICT system, there could be some mix-up with the databases. It could be human error. It could be deliberate or otherwise. But then the most important thing right now, the IEBC team coming into office this morning, is for them, there is a firm which had been engaged. And those are some of the issues that they should be tackling. Making sure that such incidents do not recur, no shared ID number because everyone has a unique ID number. And dead issues of dead voters remaining on the roll should be dealt with. Because as it is, when each and every brother or sister dies, families normally give back their IDs to the registrar of persons. There should be a link whereby the registrar of persons and deaths coordinate such that those of our brothers and sisters who have departed, they are struck off that register. So that those who remain on that register are Kenyans who are alive, Kenyans who are adults of sound mind and who can vote. True, it can be said, like last time when IEBC actually admitted that there were about 2 million voters who only voted for the president, woke up, went and queued and only voted for the president alone. No MP, no senator, no MCA. So that will be an issue.
Right.
Yeah, but going forward, the IBC team, they have their work cut out. We need a credible voters register for Kenyans to have the confidence that we are going to have credible elections. Yes.
And Javas, let's bring you in. Just before you got here, we're talking about the possibility of voter apathy. Now, Weda here seems to think this is made up by the media. There is no voter apathy. People are out there registering and getting their voters card. But William Okech seems to think there's voter apathy in terms of fear of violence towards the election. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, politics is a religion of skepticism. And we know very well that whether it's here in Kenya, across Africa, or around the world, such skepticism is rife, especially when there's been a government in place and to a great extent some percentage of people feel dissatisfied with the services rendered. But much more than that, you realize that the apathy as it is being construed here in this electioneering period is not, of course it exists to some extent. You can't say that it does not exist. And it's for various reasons. Well, there are apprehensions as to whether there will be some kind of violence. And if at all there has been and there will be any kind of violence, going by the history of this country, the drumbeats of that violence are always an orchestration or a machinations of politicians. And if there should be no violence, then politicians should make sure that they take care of that. When you look at the sentiments or every kind of remarks being made on various political podiums, you realize that there is a possible way that politicians are introducing a possibility of a violent mind, especially to their stalwarts. And majority of these are young people in this country. What needs then to be done is that to make sure that various institutions that are charged with fostering peace, cohesion, but even much more than that is the place of the IBC in fostering confidence, public confidence in the hearts and minds of my fellow citizens. Yes, we have got a new team at the helm of IBC. Yes, we have got the remarks that have been made by the leader of opposition, for example, Raila Odinga, and his deputy, Kalonzo Musyoka, about the issue of their IDs having been used to register some other person as well. Well, thing is, that should not necessarily be something for major alarm, but should be something for major concern. And the institution charged, which is IBC, should step up its efforts to make sure that the issue of the voters register is dealt with in a manner that restores public confidence. But also the leaders of opposition must not use that to try and fuel fear each day because of that.
Right.
But you see, the other thing is this. When we are looking at the kind of narratives right now as we go into the 2017 election cycle, you realize that the agenda has been lost. For instance, for purposes of this discussion, when you pick up some sentiment by the president in Meru, he said that you young people should come out, register as voters, and vote for me so that I can get rid of this person who has been always at my back. All right?
Right. Now,
that's not and should not be a national agenda. When, for example, a leader of opposition, Raila Odinga, gets to Busia and tells people that you go out, vote for me because I've been looking for this thing for far too long, and once you're done voting, leave the counting to us. Now, the issue here is just a contest about these two critical families that have been, have created some kind of dynasties. And the national agenda for progress development is lost. And I think that's where we find ourselves in some kind of political trouble.
Right, right. And we'll be addressing that in just a moment. But whether, what are your thoughts on the voters register audit questioned by the opposition, especially considering that, both William and Bigambo seem to be downplaying the fact that Raila and Kalonzo's IDs were used in the double registration. Should this be cause for alarm?
I think it's not a cause for alarm. Let's be very honest about some of these things. When people register, there are mistakes that are done. There are dead people in the register. How do these dead people come? Our own, as a country, our own tendency is that we do not report deaths. So that the register of births and deaths rarely has a chance to register the deaths. Why do I say so? My own mother died many years ago. I hold her ID to date as a souvenir in my safe. And I will not be returning it to any registrar soon.
How did you get a burial permit?
What I'm trying to tell you is,
actually,
please,
that's an interesting question, William.
that is a question for another day. But I am giving you the example that we do not report deaths. Even when a chief is supposed to collect it, when people die, it's a totally different ballgame. So there are so many people who have died and buried without their deaths being reported anywhere.
Right.
They die at home and they are buried, many of them. And they are registered voters. That needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed in a totally different way. Not in a way that Jubilee is using the death of people to in the register to kill and to do what. That's hogwash. They need to address it separately. Those people are there. Every day, even those who are registering today, the new ones, a few will die before August. That they will still be in the register. These are facts that we have to know, so that we don't attribute it to President Uhuru and William Ruto. There are so many dead people on the vote. No. Let's say, how do we have an automatic way of removing people who have died before elections? That is a sober approach. But that is not the approach they want. The dead people will be there. They die in Luoland, they die in Bondo, they die in Echaweri, they die in Mombasa. They die everywhere across board. God is fair to all of us. When death comes, it is free.
That being said, then, you know, how important is an audit of the register? That being said.
There are many dead voters across the board. So I do not know whether President Uhuru will be using a dead voter in Bondo to re-win elections.
Right.
Let us address this thing as a national thing, not as a rigging thing. That is the part I'm saying the opposition should stop.
Right.
When they are engineering to win elections, they need to be truthful, realistic, honest about the figures. Then from there they build on a force that wins. But when they are also building on lies, any foundation made on lies eventually will collapse.
Right.
They are dead voters, but it is not that the register needs to be even audited. It needs to be audited, yes, but even as you audit it, people continue dying. You audit it in the morning,
so we need a
in the
system
afternoon.
that works.
Yeah. In the afternoon, you finish auditing one page, O's from this one. In the afternoon, 10 more are dead.
Right.
W's, Waidakas, in the afternoon, another 10. So they should be realistic.
Just one point.
William, please.
I think from practice, it has always been, it's given that when a Kenyan dies, if you die in hospital or home, that account has to be done.
Right.
Because for you to get a burial permit, you have to hand in the deceased person's ID for you to get the death certificates and also the burial permit. And also those death certificates, families normally use them in terms of getting letters of administration for you to take charge of the property of the deceased. So the onus of making sure that the dead Kenyans are taken off the voters' register is more on the government agencies than on ordinary Kenyans reporting. The registrar of persons and death has that obligation to make sure that when they receive these IDs, when they're issuing those death certificates, then at the same time they should be giving copies to the IBC. And then just one point I'd like to make. I think we as Kenyans, for us to have reached a level where the government is talking us to take IDs, I think it is irresponsible. When I was growing up, there used to be a subject called government, history, and civics, the civics part. Each and every citizen has rights and obligations. That ID, me as a citizen, will entitle me to some services. So no one, not least the government, should be coming in to beg me, to kneel down for me to go and take that ID. It is my obligation to do that as a citizen. I don't need government to switch talk me to register. Yes.
Let me just clarify something. Let's
just let Weda speak, because you know his issue is that he successfully buried his mother and he still has his mother's ID in his safe.
Now let me clarify this. I think you have gotten it wrong. When somebody dies, you are given a burial permit.
Yes.
Now when you want a death certificate, which does not come immediately, it comes later. Then you take the burial permit plus the ID, and then you fill the form, and you surrender it, and you are given a death certificate. So the burial permit is almost automatic. My mother died in hospital in Kisumu, and I was given a burial permit, and I went and buried her. Now, don't also assume that everybody have property where you need to take letters of administration. You understand? That's the wrong presumption. 90% of Kenyans, when they die, there is nothing to take letters of administration over.
Right.
Therefore, I have not taken a death certificate, and I don't intend to take. So I keep my mother's ID. She looks beautiful on that ID.
What happened to our land?
Our land is not registered in my mother's name. They are normally ancestral land is in the name of our grandfather. Even that, our grandfather, Jode, we have his ID. We have not transferred the land. My father has also passed on. We have others. The land is there. You know, the way you view the law is totally different with
from
the
how
way
it
the
is in the
African
ground.
society
Right.
is structured. And you therefore need to disabuse your mind about title deeds. Where my home is, there's no title deed. But we are all entitled to it. I can't drive away my brother. My brother can't drive me away. So this IDs is not only, if now me who knows about these things, a lawyer, I have the ID. What about my village mates?
Right, right.
So the IDs are there.
That's very interesting. All right, Bigambo, let's hear from you.
Well, of course, to a very great and impressive extent, Council Weda is right.
Yes.
Because even my grandmother Cornelia, when she died, I see the ID in our house, in the possession of my father.
Right.
So these things are there, and it happens. But also, let's not assume that every death is actually reported. There are those who are consumed by crocodiles. Then there are those also who drown in water. And it's never, in the end, certified that actually this person died. At times, some have been reported to have disappeared, etc. In cases where we've seen, logs being buried in the place of a person, etc. So all these challenges are there. They will be there. And we must not use that opportunity actually to see or to breed acrimony in our country, especially in the electioneering period. And the question of cleaning up the voters' register should not just be a concern and a matter of national interest only at the election time. It is something that should be going on through and through. And when we wait only to give it importance
Every
at the election
5 years.
time, every 5 years, in fact, at midnight, at the 11th hour, I think then it's wrong on the place of those institutions that are supposed to be doing that.
Right.
And much more than that, I think we may need to realize that our fellow Kenyans are kind of getting tired of all these politicians and the way they handle their issues, to the extent that it has now brought what now I found being discussed as apathy. Now, you realize this, that when the head of government and state is going out, when the head of opposition is going out, and all their brigades to request people to take IDs, and then to request these people to go and vote, heads of institutions, not operatives within their parties, then you realize actually we're in some kind of democratic trouble in this country.
Right, right.
Now, much more than that, I think the other critical thing is that the various levels of people in this society need then to find importance in this thing we call our democratic journey. For instance, the interests of poor people in the country to go to election to vote, and what has been called in this country as middle class interests as well, very different. And the top class interests as well, very, very different. And when people are going to register as voters, they are going there for various interests, etc. Some are going to register for this election merely for tribal reasons. That should be much more cause to worry than these other things that are being discussed here. And therefore, moving forward, I think the greatest debate, the greatest discussion then should be, how do we make sure that the ills that have been there for a very long time, including this issue of dead people voting, of course you know very well that they cannot vote, brings to our interest one fact, that new times require for new measures. And those new measures call for new men. Our men remain old in our politics and governance. Times have been new, measures have remained old. Now, even with the new team at the IBC, are we certain for sure that the instruments or the equipment that's going to be used in the election is going to have no trouble at all, whether planned or accidental? If it's accidental, so be it, but should not be planned. And it is now incumbent upon the heads of IEBC, the commissioners, the secretariat, to do that which they must do day after day, to make people realize that they have, yes, piloted the equipment, etc., and driven confidence to higher levels so that we get to have confidence in a credible election.
Right, right. And I mean, let's have Weda address something that Bigambo brought in a bit earlier, saying that we've lost the bigger agenda. We've lost the major agenda of this electoral process. And there's a meme going on social media that, you know, it's only in Kenya where university students are not going to school because lecturers are on strike. Kenyans are dying of disease because hospitals are closed and doctors are also on strike. Kenyans are dying of hunger.
Yes.
There's no water in the taps, but voter registration is a national emergency. Whether have we lost the agenda?
I think we have not lost the agenda. The agenda has always been vote me in. Vote me in and then I fix things. That is what the code wants. That is what is there in Jubilee. Most of the agenda put forward, even the voters do not want to listen. That is why when I go to Seme constituency where I come from, they would simply tell me in the face whether you are very good, you are development conscious, you are a good leader, good debater, good profile. But we will not vote for you because you are with Uhuru. So forget it. Another person, Mwaura, will say, I want to contest in Roysambu. Okay, I'm good, but I will have to join Uhuru because they will not vote for me. Maybe my brother Nyangolo will also want to look for a seat. And he knows he will not get until he's with Raila. It means the voters themselves don't care about the agenda, development. They just care, are you with us or against us? Simple. So to pretend, therefore, that there is a plot, a bigger plot, what it has taken today is who is going to get power? Is it one of us? Is it us in Jubilee or the other people in COP? And that state we have been reduced to that level by the voters themselves.
Right.
They themselves do not know what they want. So what do they go for? They go back to their tribe or enclave. So whether things are thick or whether things are good, they themselves don't care.
I mean,
that's why we see some
just
very
before
good
we continue, whose mandate is it? And I see Bigambo really waiting to chip in here.
Yes.
Whose mandate is it to ensure that voters and citizens understand what
It is
what
actually
they
the
deserve?
citizens to set the agenda. If the citizens were looking for people who are development conscious, okay, the leaders will go there. But I have told you, you go there and say, I've done this, I want to do this, I want to do this. Okay? They tell you to hell with you. We don't care. If you take, for instance, let me give you leaders like Honorable Raphael Tuju. Is one of our leaders in Luland who, when he was in government, was able to move things. And you could see a road from Bondo all the way to the lake. Tarmac, working with President Kibaki. But when the time comes, hey, you are not with us. We don't want to listen. We don't care. And I think it's the same. If you go to Ichaweri, you go to Nyeri, they tell you, you may be good, but you are not with us. So it is the people themselves to change their attitude and say, we want the following things done, and we want leaders who will do them.
That's very interesting.
Then the leaders will just style up. They'll just style up. I will not go there and say, hey, me, I'm going to parliament because I'm going to help Raila. When there's war there, I'm going to help him in the war. They tell you, forget about the war. Tell us what you have done, what you are going to do. We want to see the potential. People, the leaders will just change. You know, leaders change like suits.
Because
they
you are
can
the
be green,
votes.
they can be yellow, depending on their interest.
All right, and
so
William,
it is the electorate.
do you agree that our leaders are the way they are, as selfish as they are, because Kenyans made them so?
Not necessarily so, and I will not entirely blame the electorate, because much of the political choices or factions that are there, you really have to trace it to the historical developments that happened. Much of the blame will be on the founding fathers, because the founding fathers had the most rare chance to galvanize the unity which we shared, because they fought for Uhuru as a common national entity as Kenyans. But then thereafter, due to ideological differences, of course, fueled and channeled by the Western powers, there was the USA at that time, there was the USSR, the Cold War. We lost it, especially when the doyen of opposition politics moved out of government. And then at that time, the successive regimes brought in this notion that if you are not with us, then your areas will not be developed. So that actually automatically created a siege mentality in the perceived opposition areas, that this government is not going to give us services because we are against it. But as it is, A government, irrespective of which citizen voted for you, for or against, a government is obligated to serve all citizens equally across the board. But being that we entered into a phase of multi-party politics, we have political parties. Most of those parties, just as Weda says, they are perceived to be strongest in certain areas of the country. And those inhabitants of those areas will naturally want to align themselves with those political parties. But as it is, for a majority of Kenyans, their issues are bread and butter. Do we have medicine in the hospitals? Do we have electricity, for us to be able to start our small businesses? Are the roads good to take our products to the market? So for most of Kenyans, their issues are bread and butter. And if those are addressed, I'm very sure and very capable that to a large extent, even at the local level, because since the coming in of devolution, most of the voters at the county levels, they don't even have interest in national politics. They're only looking at who is our governor, who is going to be our MP, who is going to be our MCA. So I think we are not there yet, but we are on the path to that issue-driven politics.
Right. And I mean, Bigambo, speaking of this, very deep ethnic divide that has been entrenched into Kenyans, especially when it comes to voting, would it be the same situation you would say Onyango Olor finds himself in? Because lots of leaders across the divide say his move from Jubilee to ODM came because he needed political relevance, and he had to move, like Weda says, to a person from the same region.
Well, of course, I cannot blame Council Weda. Neither can I blame Onyango Olor, because all these are manifestations of what is actually within the person. Because in the end, you realize that, yes, some politicians have always come up with this cockeyed idea that it is better to go back home. Like even Onyango Olor has said ably that he's just gone back home. Trouble with going back home, as we know also across history, is that chicken have a way of coming home to roost. And when they roost, it's never for the good measure. Now, look at it this way, that it is, unkind, for lack of a better word, to exploit the ignorance of the people and the gulf in their mind and expectations to say that leaders, and for the reason that you're called a leader, leaders are directed, are manipulated by the whims and aspirations of the people. One should always choose to step in the gap, to rise to the higher ground and better ground. Because it is incumbent upon a leader to make the better choices. Yes, you may be directed by the people. We know very well that the people who choose you. But that does not stop you from having the good judgment, the good sense, to realize that you can steer the people or steer the ship in the desired direction. Now, when you have no agenda, when you take to the stage and you cannot speak to critical issues, just the same way as campaigns are now taking place, you realize that I've had no person speak passionately to the objects of devolution and to the extent that we have achieved them, or even some of these leaders review some of the development milestones through the CIDPs of county governments. And even more painfully, when somebody like, for example, Council Murkomen says that it is improper to consider education when it comes to matters leadership. Now, look at it this way. For example, and not a question of discussing the person, when you look at, for example, somebody like Council Murkomen, he has got a degree in law and a master's in law. And then you don't want other leaders to have education, good education, a decent education at that. And the same argument on this same couch was fathered by Council Weda, a very good man with good education, and opportunities that he is enjoying presently is by virtue of that good education. So I think we need to have leaders who are more sincere and truthful, not just to the demands of the times, but looking at the future through the prism of reality. We must be made wiser by the exploration of truth.
Right. And Weda, you did bring in something very interesting earlier on, that this issue of rigging, this is politics. So as much as the opposition is crying, we do not want rigging, if they were given an opportunity to do so, they would jump on it very fast. Now, we've had Onyango Olor come from Jubilee, and he says the secret he has is as how Jubilee, or at least TNA and Uhuru and Ruto, rigged the election in 2013. And these are the secrets he says is going to bring to the opposition that says they want free, fair, and transparent elections.
Just before he defends that position, thing is, of course, Onyango Olor said that. But you see, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. For example, even in the papers through yesterday, when such leaders come out to say that they worked up the numbers to make sure that they defeat Raila Odinga.
Right.
And then, one, you want to be considered credible. You want to be considered useful and important. You want to be considered as the professional with such high standing. I mean, really, it flies in the face of decency.
I think on Onyango Law, I would like to put, first of all, this disclaimer. Onyango Law is a good friend of mine. He is also a client in my professional capacity as a lawyer. We have been comrades in arms on the same side, fighting certain things that we didn't believe in, and we did so successfully. He's a brilliant person I highly respect. He's very brave, and I think on us on the Jubilee, I feel the loss. It should have been with us here. Having said that, I really don't think he was high up there as Secretary General. I'm down here as a member of Jubilee, where I continue being a member. But as a politician, I really don't think they are secrets. I've seen the large political spectrum. There are no secrets, but you can make up a good story that says, I know our people. Even me, if I was to choose to go back, I will have to sit in my bedroom and craft something. And then I will be welcomed in, where does come?
But I mean,
but otherwise,
you say,
there are no secrets.
You say there are no secrets, but we've had the opposition, led by Senator James Orengo, say that these secrets that Onyango Law purports to have are what was dismissed as evidence during the petition before the Supreme Court. And now they want to use that same evidence to petition the courts to block President Uhuru Kenyatta and his allies from the election.
Now, these are stories that you craft. Remember the audience. The audience is the people. Otherwise, legally, as lawyers, Orengo being a senior lawyer, know that that's nothing.
Right.
You can't, first of all, go back to the simple Supreme Court. You can't bar a sitting president from he knows it. He knows the parameters of the law. But who is he addressing? It's addressing the people in Siaya, Kisumu. Tell them, even Uhuru, we have cleared with him, we are going to block him. And we have a dossier. So these are made up. A juicy story made up. Otherwise, there's no secrets. The last elections, I think my big brother, the Prime Minister, lost that one. And if he wants to win it, he needs to re-engineer. Re-engineer. If I was him, I would have said, how do I get a bit of a chunk of votes from Gema, a bit of a chunk of votes from Kalenjin? Instead of a lot of propaganda, we won. In 1992, I escorted his father, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, to Voi. And the crowd was huge. I was still young, just coming out of university. The crowd was huge. I knew Jaramogi was president. When he came number 4, I was shocked. I said, Kumbe, you look at the figures. I still say the moment the deputy president left Honorable Raila Odinga and joined President Uhuru and left with his kinsmen, it was a game changer. That fact, as long as it remains intact, they need a new formula. It doesn't matter whether it's you, there's a dossier here, a dossier there. There are dossiers also all over. And on rigging elections, we should build the IEBC in such a way that they are able to supervise elections properly and thoroughly. Whether or not to rig, if you gave Honorable Raila Odinga and his team a chance to rig, they'll rig in the morning. If you gave President Uhuru a chance to rig, they'll rig by 6:30. That's why we have an independent umpire, and we are saying, please ensure nobody rigs. But the combatants, we have seen even goals in soccer. People score with their fingers. They know you're not supposed to score a soccer match with your finger, but they want the goal. If the ref does not see, it is a goal.
Right.
So we are saying IEBC do a good job. But for some combatant, some contestant to stand on this and say, the other people are trying to rig. That's just propaganda which they are spreading so that they look clean and the other people look dishonest. Yet it's a crossboard.
It's a crossboard.
All of us are suspects in the rigging scenario.
All right, William, let's have your final comment on this.
Yes, there may not necessarily be those secrets on how to rig, but being that Onyango Law was at the helm of a party which was a ruling coalition, certainly with some significance it comes to the opposition with some first-hand experience on strategy on how to politically fundraise, on how to protect the vote, because certainly that is where the opposition had been very weak. How do you, after campaigning, being on the campaign trail and seducing votes on the actual polling day when the votes have been cast, how do you protect your vote? So certainly, true, he may come with a few votes, his and of his friends and families, but there's that depth of skill on how to protect that vote, on how to fundraise and strategy in the campaigns. Yes.
And Bigambo, let's talk about the latest stalemate now that has emerged from this mass voter registration exercise. This is between opposition leader Raila Odinga and Interior CS Joseph Nkaissery. Now, let's listen in first of all to what Nkaissery and Raila Odinga had to say with regard to this stalemate.
Every chief, my friend, kama sublocation yako watu haja chukua. Kwanza hapa Kiambu mumewasajili tu about 38,000 for the last 3 days out of 600. How do you bring Uhuru back? 600 votes, 600,000 votes. Unakumbuka tulishinda tu na less than 10,000 last time. Ni kweli? Nyinyi watu wa Central muko na over 3,700,000 vitambulisho ambayo mjachukua kura. You got to wake up. You must wake up. Na siku ile ya kuni, my friend, unaweza kucheza na huko watu wanapiga kura kila mtu, alafu sisi unasikia asubuhi tuko wapi?
Nimesikia bwana Nkaissery akisema ati machifu katika eneo za upinzani wasisaidie watu kuja kusajilisha. Bwana Nkaissery, nataka kumwambia yeye amepotoza njia. Kenya ni Wakenya wote. Wapinzani ni wale ambao wanaunga mkono Jubilee, wote ni Wakenya. Na chifu natakana wafanye kazi yao, maana wanapata mshahara kutoka kwa ushuru ya wananchi. Na hata eneo ya upinzani wanapiga ushuru. Hapa eneo yetu yote hapa serikali inakota pesa. Hawa machifu wana jukumu ya kufanya kazi kwa Wakenya wote bila ubaguzi.
All right, Raila Odinga there and Joseph Nkaissery speaking on the mass voters registration exercise. Let's now bring in a governance expert, Javas Bigambo. And Bigambo, I believe this is something close to what you were talking about earlier. You know, leaders of institutions are going out there and saying, go register as voters so you can vote for me and, you know, do this to so and so. But now we're seeing, of course, we've heard what Nkaissery said, but with Raila Odinga's interpretation, Nkaissery said that chiefs and assistants found sympathizing with the opposition in this registration exercise have no business being in government.
It is absolutely out of taste, of course, for a cabinet secretary to make a remark, especially to that extent. While he holds his docket, he must appeal to the higher senses of his mandate and what that docket entails. And of course, the other thing that is also in bad taste is not a question of helping Uhuru Kenyatta, as he said. If people get their IDs are not about Uhuru Kenyatta, it's about their identification. And of course, you know very well this document is important for purposes of registering as a voter, and hence your democratic right. The other thing is that, of course, we are going to see lots of these accusations and counter-accusations. Right. However, I think it is important that we see how to help our leaders to get back to their senses, whether it is Nkaissery, and history does not, lie to us. Nkaissery himself has studied proper politics at the feet of Raila Odinga. He left his political position as a member of ODM to go join government. And we know very well that, of course, the heart of Nkaissery for a very long time has been the heart of the opposition, the heart of ODM. And of course, his present interests make him to make such statements. And that's where his bread is buttered. For Raila Odinga, of course, we know very well too that when it comes to addressing vital national interest issues and policy issues, such statements must be made not to whip up emotions of the people. And that is also proper. We've seen Nkaissery speaking passionately and almost emotionally. And we don't expect a cabinet secretary to get too emotional on an issue and on a political issue such as this. And that's why I think here you realize that people have realized that things are thick. Things are quickly becoming others. And that's why when you see very many months to the election, the president has realized that the seat he's sitting on is pretty hot and much coveted. And going by the history of very many things that are happening across Africa, you realize that many presidents are being unsat by the opposition. That's, of course, a cause to worry for the president.
Right. I mean, the Gambia being case in point, but Weda, what are your thoughts on Kaisari's words?
I think Kaisari, I think the Honorable Raila Odinga, the Prime Minister, he forgets that he's carrying such a big voice and a big room. And he's hitting everybody. The other day was hitting Matiang with it, now he's hitting Kaisari. And I think Kaisari is a bitterness because Kaisari was his, then he left. If I listened to what Kaisari said, is there something worth hue and cry hula baloo? He said, take these things, go and get a vote. And in fact, you people have enough, you can vote for the president. And Kaisari has acknowledged...
But is an Interior Cabinet Secretary supposed to say something like that?
Let us be fair. He's Interior Cabinet Secretary, courtesy of President Uhuru. Let us... We are human beings before we are Interior Secretary. And as a human being, you know, when I was with Raila, I was an assistant minister. That's what he gave me. This Uhuru man has given me full cabinet. In the next government, chances that I'll continue being cabinet are there. So naturally, I would be, you have these votes, take them, vote for this man, we continue. It's natural. Let's not take a big room and pretend he should have been neutral, he should have been cabinet.
I mean, but whether the Constitution states very well that cabinet secretaries should not get involved in politics, and you're condoning what CS Kaisari has said. I don't know if you would condone it if a cabinet secretary comes and does the same for the opposition.
Now, the Constitution says the cabinet secretary should not engage in politics. Okay? That is correct. The same Constitution says that those cabinet posts will be given to you by politicians. Okay? When that very person who has given you that position is on fire, it is going. Do you sit back and fold your arms and say the Constitution says we should not engage in politics? There are aspects of the Constitution that are good later. And as a lawyer, I would like us to obey them. But the reality is that these same people, Kaisari was speaking to people where the president has supported. I was telling them, please take this, vote and vote for this man. It is not good enough for my big brother, Honorable Raila Odinga, to take his room to be twangering this one, this one. Because I also know the same language we use in Lula, asking people to vote, to take the chorus, is equally criminal. It's criminal, in fact. I've heard it. I know it. We belong to each other. I know what we say. So let's not take one and then we pretend now it's Kaisari. Let us just say, let us mold our language, let it be good, but let everybody take their chorus.
All right, gentlemen, this is becoming a very heated discussion, but unfortunately we are out of time. We've been speaking on week 2 of the mass voters registration exercise with my panelists in the studio, lawyers Ambrose Weda, William Okech, and governance expert Javas Bigambo in studio, which brings us to a break here on Morning Express. For those on our KTN Home channel, Life and Style comes up next. For those on KTN News, our news updates for the hour, and Robin Toskin will be with you later on for Sport Chat. To take a short break, don't go too far.